Hello, everyone, and welcome to the interviewing workshop for the College of Business and Technology. Apologies today, my camera is having some difficulty, so I'm sorry about that, but we will proceed anyway here. So just a reminder, this workshop is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and any of the material you see today will be sent in a follow-up email. For anyone tuning in live, just make sure we stay muted so we have a clean recording for the folks who might be watching that replay. If at any time you have questions or you would like to engage throughout the presentation, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature or the reactions available to you. If this is your first time interacting with Career and Alumni Services, welcome. My name is Logann Todd. I am the Career and Alumni Services Manager for United States University. My job is really to help you feel prepared after graduation, whatever that looks like for you. So asking for a promotion, you're going to be starting a new job search process, or you're just looking to update your resume, know that I'm here for you as a resource. Of course, today we're going to be talking all about interviewing, but if at any time you need support with any of the other items you see on the screen, feel free to schedule an appointment with me using Calendly, or you're welcome to email me as well. So we're jumping right in here. We're going to break down interviewing into different steps. So the first step is really before the interview. So we know we have one coming up. What should we be doing to prepare? The first thing you're going to do is you're really going to conduct as much research as you can on the organization. So think about, what do they have going on? What types of projects are they working on? Are there particular interests, corporate interests, values, mission statements? What can you learn more about so that you feel more prepared and comfortable talking about it in the interview? Then we're going to practice, because they know if you go into this interview and you have not practiced at all, or it's been a while since you've interviewed, they will notice that you're kind of winging it. So practice, practice, practice as much as you can, but do not sound robotic to the point where we're reading off a paper, okay? What we can do is we can show up early, because if we're early, that means we're on time. If we're on time, sometimes that seems a little late, or we might feel a little rushed. So always good to either sign on early if it's virtual, or you're welcome to, of course, show up to the interview in person early. With you, you're going to bring copies of your resume, you're going to bring work samples. Maybe you have a QR code where they can easily scan it and pull up your information and resources, and have them ready to send via email if you're doing a virtual interview. So sometimes they might ask, would you be able to share your screen or share your portfolio, right? Have it up and ready to go so that all you do is click the share screen button, choose the screen that shows your portfolio, whatever piece you're sharing, and you're ready to go. This not only shows that you're prepared, but it also shows that you're pretty tech savvy and you know how to share your screen. Before your interview, you're going to get a good night's sleep and you're going to eat a well-balanced meal. So if it's in the morning, that means breakfast. If it's in the afternoon, lunch, breakfast. Make sure that we're maintaining healthy boundaries for ourselves so that we feel prepared. We feel like our best self going into this interview. Something else you can do is pick out your outfit in advance. You probably haven't interviewed in a while, and so it's good to share maybe purchasing new items or trying on your existing items to make sure that they fit and you feel comfortable in them. If you feel comfortable, you're more likely to be confident. So giving yourself as much time as possible with choosing the right outfit, making sure everything fits. And if it doesn't, you have time to go get something new. Now, there's many different types of interviews that you might encounter. So a one-way interview is something newer in the industry right now, and it is usually using some type of pre-screening tool or assessment or an artificial intelligence-based system. What you'll be doing is they'll give you some prompts, they might give you some questions, and you're essentially going to be recording yourself, and it will have a little countdown or a timer. And so you are just recording your answers to the computer, or you're completing some type of assessment within a time frame. This is usually a really quick way for an employer to weed out individuals in the process to help you move forward to get to hopefully a phone screening or some type of in-person second round interview. One-way interviews are becoming much more popular because of the influx of applications. There's more job seekers in the market due to COVID and due to new graduates. So thinking about that, how can you set yourself apart? We'll talk about a few tips in a few slides here. Phone screenings are still very popular. What this is essentially just a quick phone call with that recruiter, the hiring manager. They're going to ask you a couple different questions to see if you meet the qualifications and responsibilities. And then they might say, okay, great, we'll move on to an in-person interview, or they might stop your candidacy right there. So these are quick screening systems. They can be over the phone. They might even be a quick Zoom call, but just know that those are an option. In-person interviews, of course, are pretty much the standard if we're going to be working in person. This could be a single round, it could be multiple rounds, it could be with multiple people in the organization, something like a group or panel interview. Or we have virtual interviews, which are much more popular stemming from the pandemic. Especially if you're interested in hybrid and remote roles, these are often done remotely. It's much more convenient for all parties, right? We don't have to travel to a location, everybody can meet up at once. And virtual interviews are also great because they can be done in multiple rounds. So, again, kind of more convenient for folks who might be across the country. Panel interviews, as I said, these are with multiple people interviewing you. Now, there's a couple different options for this. They could be representatives from the organization interviewing you, or I have seen as well, you and other candidates will be in the same interview. So they're essentially interviewing multiple candidates at the same time in the same room. So just know that these are different types of interviews you might face. The last one is a work sample or some type of presentation or prompting interview. They're going to give you a prompt or a sample assessment, and they're going to want you to create some type of material to share. And so might give you a business proposal or a business prompt, and they want you to create some type of presentation to showcase that and to present to the interviewers. So just want to give you some different types of interviews you could expect in your processes. It's good to be familiar with these, good to get comfortable interviewing in different settings so that it's not a surprise for you. Now, I mentioned those one-way interviews, those virtual interviews, right? And so these can happen in many different ways. They can be an assessment, or it's you actually recording yourself in the camera. And so if you ever see anything from HireVue, TalView, Yobes, Test Dome, Test Gorilla, these are all those one-way interviews I was mentioning. So as I said, they're going to give you a lot of time to record your response or give you a set of questions and answers, assessment type of thing. What they're doing in this virtual interview space is they're really scanning your facial features, your eye contact, the background of your screen. Do you have any distractions? Do you have any movement in your camera frame? But it's also analyzing your speech, the content that you're speaking, the clarity of your words. Are you using filler words such as like, but? Are we pausing in between our sentences? And maybe the different style and tone of your speaking. For example, if we're trying to go for a sales position, an employer might put in details into this digital interview tool that they want someone who has a really big personality. They're very expressive when they're speaking. They might be really great with the word choice that they're using, very enthusiastic, very persuasive. So they might be putting in these different criteria or qualifications into the interviewing platform to keep an eye on for. And so for you, if you're going to be interviewing for this, these are things you're going to want to practice. You're going to want to get comfortable speaking into the little camera on your laptop. It's really difficult to show expression, to show enthusiasm, and really showcase your energy through a computer screen. Where if we're in an in-person interview, it's a little bit easier for an employer to pick up on that. So it's important to get familiar with this process and to practice familiarizing yourself with this essentially. With those virtual assessments, these could be treated as kind of like quizzes or tests, but there's no right or wrong answers. They're assessing your skills, personality, emotional intelligence assessments. If you're going into more of a tech-based or IT role, they might have you do some preliminary coding assessment or testing your knowledge on certain platforms or something. So be aware that those are an option in the interviewing process. So some tips: have an idea of the types of questions they might ask. If it's a introductory interview, they're probably just going to ask, tell me about yourself. What qualifications do you have for this position? What's your experience with XYZ? It's not going to be anything super thorough or in depth for this type of interview. They'll usually reserve those questions for later on in the process. Because of the way that you're interviewing, it's okay to have a little cheat sheet of notes next to you. Have your resume printed out next to you. Or if you have dual screens, you can have your resume up on the other screen for you to look at. Something a little silly, but it does work really well, is putting some type of sticky note or sticker next to the camera icon on your laptop. This will remind you to look up at this camera sometimes. Now, we're not going to do direct eye contact the entire time, but it will at least help you get familiar with glancing up at that camera, just like we would make eye contact in an in-person interview. So I have a couple different resources here to practice interviewing. So the first one is Udly. Udly is a great resource. It's free for the first 10, I believe, practice sessions. This is an interview and communications coaching program, but it is really great for you to put in your sample questions. You can record yourself and it will give you immediate feedback. You can also schedule a mock interview with me. I'm more than happy to pull some sample questions for you and we can work on it together. ChatGPT is also, or any of the generative AI platforms are really great for helping you prepare for interviews. So you can see here I plugged in the prompt, provide me a list of questions for a business manager position. And it, of course, from this photo, it only shows the top 5, but there was actually a list of 30 questions. So you can be a lot more specific. You can even put in the job description and have it generate interview questions. You can tell them the place of employment and they can pull and tailor these questions to you as well. So it's really fantastic tool to use for interviewing prep. And then here, it can even help you write an answer to it too. So you can upload your resume and you can say, based on my resume, can you help me create a answer to the following interview question and then provide the interview question. So I did have a little sample transcript here. I definitely recommend checking it out. Practice with ChatGPT, get some questions and answers and get feedback. It is a great tool to use and add to your toolkit. The one type of question that I always recommend practicing before an interview, if you're going to practice at all, is the behavioral interview question. So these are the questions that often start with, tell me about a time, or can you describe an experience, or share an example of. So anytime you hear those catchphrases, I want you to immediately think, okay, this is a behavioral interview question, and I'm going to use the STAR method. So STAR is a really easy way to get through these questions successfully. STAR stands for situation, task, action steps, and results. So the situation would just be sharing details about the scene or the example. The tasks are, what was your responsibility in that situation? And then the action steps are the actual steps that you took to address it. And the result, of course, what happened? What are the outcomes of the situation? So I have an example here. So if the question was, tell me about a time you had to complete a task within a tight deadline, describe the situation and explain how you handled it. So you can see here, I broke down my response into the STAR method. So for our example, it was at a former employee. We had lost a teammate. They left the company. The tasks, which is my responsibilities, took responsibility for the lost teammates project and that short deadline. Some action steps that I took were that I brought in other team members and we delegated work based on strengths. And as a result, we completed the project one day prior and presented it to company executives. So you can see how you can use the STAR method to break down a situation into those different steps and ultimately come up with an outcome. Now, if I were to present this to an employer, what I might say is, while I typically like to plan out my work in stages and complete it piece by piece, I can also achieve high quality work results under tight deadlines. Once at a former company, an employee had left days before the deadline of one of his projects. I was asked to assume responsibility for it with only a few days left to learn about and complete the project. I had completed a task force with other colleagues and delegated work based on my teammates' strengths, and we all completed the assignment with a day to spare and successfully presented it to our company executives. I believe I pivot very easily when working under tight deadlines. So you can see how we used the breaking down of the STAR method and turned it into a really solid answer to give the interviewer. So anytime you hear the tell me about a time or describe a situation or describe an experience when, I want you to think about the STAR method. I have some other resources here for you for questions and answers. So top interview questions and how to answer them. This is a great resource along with top behavioral interview questions. At a minimum, these are fantastic resources to check out, even if you are just practicing really quickly. How to make a good impression, different questions you might be asked in a group or panel interview. If you're asked for like a coffee chat, for example, here's how you can handle that. Open-ended are not as normal as you would think. They're pretty rare to see in an interview process, but just in case you are asked them, some different tips and tricks here. And then this last one, I highly recommend bookmarking it. This is illegal interview questions and how to respond. So I want you to be aware of them. I want you to know if they ask you them, how to respond appropriately and professionally. And so there are some different situations and scenarios that you should be thinking about and that you should be aware of and be prepared for. So we just talked about before the interview. Now we're moving to during the interview. What we're going to do is we're going to remain good eye contact, right? Whether we're in person, right, we're going to make eye contact here and there. If we're virtual, we're going to look at our little sticky note on our laptop. We're going to be positive, enthusiastic. We're not going to be overly enthusiastic where we're moving our hands and all over the place and fidgeting in our chair. We're going to maintain good posture. We're going to refrain from fidgeting. It's okay to use our hands to talk if we're very expressive, but we're going to try to limit that as much as we can. We prepared all these resources, right? We have our resume, we might have a portfolio, work sample. I want you to showcase those things. So show them how you can use your share screen feature or provide examples in the interview if you're in person. Then I want you to be prepared with questions to ask the interviewer. An interview is a two-way street. So you are interviewing them as well as they're interviewing you. So it's good to have questions prepared to ask them at the end of the interview because they always ask, do you have questions for us? And you should say yes. So I do have a resource here linked within here for questions to ask at the end of the interview. I definitely recommend coming prepared with 3 to 5 because they might answer a couple of them in the interview itself. And then the last thing during that interview, you're going to ask for contact information so you can follow up. A good way to say this is, would you be willing to provide your contact information with me just in case I have questions and I want to follow up on our interview? It's absolutely okay to ask for this because oftentimes you're only communicating with the recruiter or the hiring manager. So it's important to get contact information from the folks you actually interview with so that you can follow up. Which leads us to after the interview. And so sometimes they might give you some next steps or they might tell you what those next steps are in the interview. They might say, hey, we're going to follow up with an assessment, or can you provide us with a list of 3 references? So they might give you a little bit of homework. It's important that you follow up and complete any steps within a timely manner. So send that information over, complete the assessment, whatever it is, make sure you're following up. While you do that, I want you to also send a thank you note. And so I want you to send a thank you to anybody who you come in contact with, any of the interviewers, the recruiter for helping you through this process, express gratitude. If you're sending notes to more than one person, you should really try to personalize that note. Maybe there was something in the interview that you got to connect with them on, or you had like a mini chat with them about. So try to connect things from your interview into those personalized notes. If you can send a handwritten one, if it's a local organization, even better. Do that. Hand deliver it to them or send it in the mail. I always say a handwritten note goes a lot further than an email, but sometimes that just doesn't work out or it doesn't make sense for this position. So keep that in mind as well. And then good programs to follow up every 10 to 14 days. So once we had that interview, if we haven't heard back and it's been about a week and a half, I want you to follow up and just check in, see how things are going. You never really know what's going on. Some people could be taking vacation. Some people could go out on bereavement. Life happens. So sometimes it might be a little bit longer than what you expect. So it's okay to check in and ask if they need anything or if they have any follow-up questions for you. Which leads us to responding to rejections. So sometimes it just doesn't work out and we get that dreaded email that says we've decided to go with other candidate for this position. When you get those emails, I want you to stop and pause, and I don't want you to dwell on it. because I know it's a super stressful and overwhelming process, especially when we get this rejection email. But a rejection email does not mean that that door is closed. It just might mean something else happened. We might have another candidate who maybe they just had another certification than you, or maybe they had a personal connection at the organization. That doesn't mean that you were not good enough for the role. It just means we can try again. What I want you to do though is I want you to follow up with that email. I want you to be kind and be professional, and I want you to ask for feedback. You can just let them know, like, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with me. I really appreciated meeting everyone throughout the process and learning more about the organization. I would love to see if you could provide me with some feedback so I can improve for future interviews. Something like that is super simple, but it goes a long way. Even if they don't respond, you still did your due diligence and responded. But like I said, we never really know what happens behind the scenes unless we're actually in it. So I always say you could be second in line, you could be the backup for the role. They might offer the position to someone and they decline. They're going to say, hey, this person reached out to us. They're clearly interested in the position. So let's see if they're still interested now. Oftentimes, like I said, they'll offer that position because they remember you. You are kind, you followed up, you showed the initiative. They might even offer you another position. So accept any kind of feedback, take it with a grain of salt, and move forward to the next steps. So that's it for interviewing today. I kind of have everything wrapped up into this interviewing guide. So you can scan this QR code and it will take you to the interviewing guide. It's also accessible on the Career Services website, accessible through the main United States University website under the Students tab. Some final tips here are be proactive and be prepared for those interviews, right? If you know what's coming, do your research. I want you to feel prepared, feel comfortable, pick out your outfit ahead of time, have all of your resume samples or your resumes printed out, ready to go, and then connect with me or use Udly or use ChatGPT to practice. But remember that you are interviewing the employer too. Make sure you have questions to ask at the end of the interview. I want to make sure that this is a good fit for you as well. Be sure to follow up and stay connected. We're going to send a thank you note. If we don't hear back within, a week or so, we can always follow up, ask them if they need anything, check in on the status of the application. And then, of course, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're not really sure where to start with interviewing, if you want to practice, please know I'm here for you as a resource. So that's it for today's presentation. Here's my contact information with my email. You're going to get a follow-up from me with a recording and all of the slides. You can schedule an appointment with me anytime using Calendly. Here is the link to the Career Resources website. And if you enjoyed today's presentation or you'd like to give feedback, here is a quick QR code to the feedback form. Any feedback you have for me is helpful. If there's another career topic that you want me to present on, definitely drop it in the chat or drop it in the form. I would love to hear it. So thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, if you're watching the replay, please email me, please connect with me. I am happy to support you. Take care, and I hope to see you soon.